In this video, we're going to go over some tools you can use to create sequential runs. By that, I mean patterns that repeat, like this. Okay, so the reason I did that was to show that this little limitation exercise that we're going to do is actually crosses over to many different styles. This will benefit anybody in any style, but we're going to just do 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. But there's a snag. We're going to create a limitation for ourselves. This will force us to create patterns. We're going to only allow 3 notes, a root, third, and a fifth. So wherever we go to the 4, to the 7, we have to use a root, third, and a fifth. So right here, we already have our first sequential pattern. Because you notice something that's going on here. This by itself is its own sequential pattern. It's just 1, and we'll hold over the common tones for cool effect and do this. So we already got a sequential pattern using just chord tones. And I messed up there. I'll let the sequencer play it back faster. I'll record it in. So this limitation has already forced us to create a sequential pattern 1, where the bottom note is doing that and the top area is doing that, which is actually a very common sequential run by itself. So we're going to start filling in the gaps now with neighbor tones, like this. Okay, just simple. Neighbor tone, neighbor tone, neighbor tone, neighbor tone. We're not trying to create the best thing on the planet. We're learning how to create sequential patterns. So maybe do it like this. Hold the common tone between the chords for cool effect. And you could just keep going downwards with this pattern. And it's still 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. Except I'm surrounding one of the tones with neighbor tones. Oops, I messed up there. It doesn't matter. I'm not a keyboard player, So there's another pattern. Now I'll go record that into the sequencer and play it back. Okay, so we're not looking to sound like any particular style here, but we're going to do something else now. We're going to go use chromatic neighbor tones. If you know how to use chromaticism and neighbor tones, this should be easy for you. Same exact pattern, but now we're using chromaticism. Only allowing a root, third, and a fifth. So we've used all 12 chromatic notes. And we're getting a pattern like this. And this is something actually someone like Mozart would do, believe it or not. If you don't know your history, this is something he would do. Maybe like this. So exactly like the previous one, except we're using chromatic neighbor tones. And I'll go record this into the sequencer. So there we go, highly chromatic version. Let's do something else. Let's go this direction like this. We have to fill in the gap, okay, of the, remember we're only allowing 3 notes. This will force you to create patterns to fit those notes, okay? And what we'll do is we'll do groups of 5 instead per beat to make it interesting. This is something you may want to pre-plan. Let's say you want to do groups of 5, so we'll force this into that. So if you have to count it out at first, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Now we can go ahead and keep it into a pattern of 5, now without pausing and counting. And we see it fits nicely. Kind of a cool effect too when you hold out, sustain the notes. So now you have groups of 5 per beat. It sounds like this in the sequencer. Let's stay with the groupings of the tuplet of 5, and we'll do the first pattern we did originally from the start of this video. This one. And we're going to do something similar to the previous one, but now here, if I go to the C, we still have to have a root and a third and a fifth, so we're going to arpeggiate the lower end like that. So we still retain a root, third, and a fifth, okay? But a group of 5. And this has potential to create some interesting sustain patterns that are like this. The arpeggiation in the lower end forces you to, and you could sustain those notes because they're common to the next chord. Up to speed. Okay, so now that I've done these limitation exercises, I created an extended sequence using the same exact chord progression, but did a really quick mock-up of what it could potentially sound like in some kind of pedal point build-up situation. But bear in mind, I did that really quick just for this very reason of this video. So this is the pattern. Now it repeats. Very Tchaikovsky-like, actually. And it keeps repeating that as it rises. So let's demonstrate it in a different fashion. Let's take that group of 5, that pattern we started with. Let's do so with a little bit of a swing feel, and we'll choose something like Dorian and just minor 7th chords or something. 1 and 2, like Dorian. So I'm using the same pattern that we created in the 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. Okay, for all you film guys, maybe you're going to use Lydian and you want to create some kind of falling effect. You could use that group of 5 pattern we created here, as if some kind of feather is falling, or slowly falling, well, just falling. This pattern of 5, maybe faster. Represent some kind of slow fall of a feather. There you go, in a dreamy kind of Lydian way. But the point is we've created these other sequential runs, or even just patterns from the initial limitation exercise. That's what you want to get out of this. What that limitation exercise did for us, forcing ourselves to only use a root, third, and a fifth, is forcing us to create these sequential patterns that actually revolve around that root, third, or fifth. I encourage you to go sit at your keyboard or notation program or whatever. Remember, this is not about keyboards. It's maybe about writing for piano. That's a different story. And actually do these limitation kind of exercises. Give yourself a root, third, a fifth, or a root, third, and a 7, and try to work around those notes or something in a way that forces you to use any of those degrees, root, third, or fifth, or 7th, but force yourself to revolve around that particular tone that's filling in the root, third, fifth, or if you're using a 7th, and using neighbor tones, chromatic neighbor tones, passing tones, chromatic passing tones. If you're not good at chromaticism, use stuff like just plain diatonic tones. Try it with different modes, whatever. Again, there's a lot of crossover value for doing the simple exercises like this. And I call this simple because we are using a simple, well-known progression to create these sequential runs.